Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1991 film Popcorn, and I know I don't review a whole lot of films from the 90s because really it wasn't great for horror in the 90s, but having finally seen Popcorn, I can say I enjoyed it. I had a fun time and I would watch this film again, but also, that said, I'm going to rate this two ways, as a film in the pantheon of all films and as a so bad it's good film, because for anyone who's seen it, you can probably agree it's a so bad it's good film. A lot. The acting is very over the top, but let's get into it. Directed by Mark Herrier, who was an actor from Porky's and Porky's 2 the Next Day. He actually ended up replacing Alan Ormsby after principal photography. Now, Alan Ormsby actually wrote the script and was supposed to direct. Don't know why, probably creative differences, because it's always creative differences with the producers. So Ormsby wrote the script, and he also wrote scripts for Deranged, Confessions of a Necrophile, Death Dream, Cat People, Porky's 2 the Next Day, and The Substitute, just to name a few. And the story was by Mitchell Smith, who also worked on scripts for The Dirty Night's Work and Sacrifice. This film obviously stars Jill Schoelen as Maggie. She's also been in some other great films. She's been in The Stepfather, which I highly recommend, the horror version of The Phantom of the Opera, and The Curse to the Bite, which I have not seen. Amy O'Neill apparently was originally playing Maggie in the film, but she needed to be replaced for some reason. I don't know, maybe creative differences, once again. Apparently, Schoelen was then brought in, and she apparently said that she didn't really interact with the cast, with the cast all that much, because a lot of her takes, or a lot of what she was in, were kind of reshoots, because a lot of the film had already been filmed at this point. So it was mainly reshoots. So, what was her name again? Amy O'Neill apparently had the most time with the crew as Maggie, and then Jill Schoelen steps in, which I like Jill Schoelen in that role. Obviously, I don't know what Amy O'Neill's performance was like, but Jill Schoelen worked out just fine. The box office performance was extremely poor for this film. Probably won't surprise anyone who's actually seen it, or who will be seeing it, which I recommend. It's on Shudder at the moment. The film was shot in Jamaica, so that will explain a lot of the use of reggae music. I like the use of reggae music in the film. I think it adds to the kind of weird hokiness of the film, and I think it also adds to the fun of the film. One of my favorite parts of the film is when the band is on stage performing with the crowd. It gives it a really good party vibe, and that's one of the things I also really love about this film, is that with the whole movie marathon that these people are putting on, how they filmed it and the role of the extras in it, it just really captures that kind of party, having a good time vibe. And I love it. Like, it makes the film more fun for me personally. The opening of all the masks that are in the water is very creepy, but also a extremely intriguing setup for the film. So, obviously we find out what that's all about much later. It's Toby and all the faces that Toby has, which is, how the faces happen are kind of weird, and also the fact that, well, I'll talk about it later, but he ends up getting a face that he hasn't actually molded before, but I'll bring that up. I think that's just a continuity issue with the film, a plot hole, if you will. But showing that initially kind of hooks the audience, as like, this is creepy and weird. What does this have to do with the film? And then we find out. Maggie's dream is wild, and it makes me wonder if it's some sort of premonition, which obviously, I mean, it is to a degree, like, a premonition that she's going to find out that she was the daughter of Lanyard Gates, who, for a lot of the actual film, believes, she believes that he's still alive. But it's more of like a kind of premonition, but also like some information from the past that's kind of like tucked away in her psyche somewhere that her Aunt Suzanne is trying to hide from her for obvious reasons. Always love seeing Dee Wallace in this film. Obviously, she played Suzanne, and she handles that ninth circle of hell phone call quite well. Now, obviously, after seeing the end of the film, you know that Toby was probably the one making that phone call, just starting to do a little bit of harassment, and then he talks Suzanne into coming to the theater, and then I thought he was going to end up killing her, but he didn't. He kind of like put her in that body cast with still holding the gun, which was kind of weird. I didn't really dig the whole body cast in imprisonment thing. I think they could have come up with something more fun and interesting, to be honest. The ridiculousness of the characters is cranked up to 11. I think most people would probably agree with me with that. They all deliver lines in a very, very over-the-top way, which adds to the fun of it being a so bad it's good film. So I don't have a problem with it. I actually enjoy the fact that the characters are so over-the-top and ridiculous. Their mannerisms are a little bit exaggerated. Obviously, their line delivery is extremely exaggerated. And the biggest one of all of them is Tom Villard, the guy who plays Toby, my favorite part of the film. I kind of feel like this is like, it's the vibe of like prime Jim Carrey before Jim Carrey became prime Jim Carrey. I'm talking like The Mask and after, basically. That's what Tom Villard felt like. It was like, he was Jim Carrey before Jim Carrey was Jim Carrey, if that makes any sense. But he's my favorite part because he's so ridiculous. He's so over the top with his performance. It just made me wish, though, that there was a lot more of him in the film. Like, it made me think, we don't even need the whole mystery aspect of who the killer is. Is it really Lanyard Gates or not? We just need more of Toby doing his thing, being over the top and off his rocker in a fun way. The reggae music during the setup montage makes it more cheesy, for sure. Yes, I already kind of talked about that. The backstory on Lanyard Gates is pretty cool. I like the whole drug-addled cultist ordeal and the fact that he was making films as well. And I think the film was kind of supposed to be like a part of this grand ritual, which would achieve something. And then Toby believes that he needs to recreate this because then maybe that will kind of somehow, I don't know why he thinks this, will somehow fix the situation. And his mom won't have died. He won't have been burned in the fire that killed Lanyard Gates, so on and so on. When Suzanne goes to the theater, the series of events are so random seeming that you kind of have no clue where the film's actually going to go. I do think that until you start seeing people actually being killed at the theater, you don't really know where the film is going. It gives it a good kind of mysterious vibe, and it really kind of just has this feeling of anything could happen at any time. But once the killings start to happen, then you get the idea, okay, people are going to be offed one by one, and it's going to be with kind of stuff having to do with the film stuff. So that's all right. All the gimmicks being done at the theater is reminiscent of William Castle and what William Castle ended up coming up with for his films. Obviously, it was ripped directly from William Castle. They took great inspiration from that. The shocking the seats thing, that's actually something William Castle did. Having actors there to like be ridiculous and kind of immerse people in this experience of going into the theater, that's another thing that Castle did. Like flying that mosquito over, Castle did some stuff kind of like that. So I think it's cool. I think it's a really cool way to grab something old and bring it into a more modern-ish film. They do create a fun atmosphere, so much that it makes you want to do something similar. Like I was kind of saying, like the reggae music helps, but they also set it up in a really good way within the film of capturing that party vibe, doing that whole party situation. And it was pretty good. And it makes you want to get involved in something like that. Maybe do your own kind of movie marathon situation as well. It's funny that Maggie thinks Lanyard potentially being at the theater is a good thing. Like she kind of links this into wanting to do her own film. Like in the beginning, it's set up that she's trying to do her own film. And then she kind of has this play into, this could be great for my film. I could really use this material. And she would like to learn more about Lanyard Gates and kind of ask him questions and all that jazz. So yeah, good times. I kind of wish that the mosquito movie was actually real, because it actually reminds me a bit, the way it looks and the way it plays out, of the film Giant Spider Invasion, which is awesome and has the riff tracks treatment. So you should seek that out. It's ridiculous and fun on its own, so you could just watch it that way, but I highly recommend it with the riff tracks treatment as well. But that's the thing, like they show a lot of these films from the movie Marathon, and it kind of makes me wonder if that was done a little bit to kind of pad the runtime, but it's also fun. Like the films that they created to be a part of this marathon were fun. It was a lot of fun. Loved it. They're hokey. They're ridiculous. They're over the top. So much so that, like I said, I wanted them to be real. I want to be able to go after watching Popcorn and actually find these films and watch them in their entirety because they're ridiculous and they're fun. They might focus a bit too much on the movies from the marathon. Like I said, yeah, it's kind of like padding runtime. Mr. Davis getting impaled by the giant mosquito was okay. I mean, it was kind of fine. You see a little bit of blood. I kind of wanted it to be more like over the top, grotesque, gruesome, more gory, but it is what it is. It was fine. It worked fine. But I don't like the fact that they then kind of use the exact same death in the end with Toby. I guess it kind of makes sense because it's like a full circle killing thing where like that's the first kill that he does and then that's how he himself gets killed. So I guess it's kind of cool in that aspect, but you always just want to see new kills, basically. Give us all the new kills, really. And, they don't do that in that sense. But it was okay. The mask-making scene is very interesting, and it makes you think that the main evil individual could be posing as anyone in the theater, and obviously that is what ends up happening. As he's offing people, he's molding their faces and then making his own mask, and then going around masquerading as those people in order to get close to other people, and then that's his whole thing. He's the man of many faces, literally, because he's collecting them. I do think it would have been a little more fun maybe if he was actually just like cutting them off and like had a better way to put them on his face so they looked realistic, kind of Leatherface-ish. But yeah. Who just sits next to another person's date and moves in on them? That's an odd scene with the guy who moves in on Mark's date at the movie marathon. Everything having to do with that seemed like really didn't need to be in the film. It does kind of add to the ridiculousness of it, but it just seems kind of more like something to pad the runtime. I wasn't a big fan of that. I could have done without it, but I could see where a lot of people would actually enjoy that and be like, oh, it just adds a little extra zaniness to the film, because it does. The seat zapping that Buzz does actually looks like a really good time. He's enjoying it a lot, and it kind of seems like something that maybe a lot of other people might enjoy being able to do, like looking down, watching people, and then pushing the button for that row, like, you're getting zapped, and you're getting zapped, and you're getting zapped. And that scene just captures more of the fun in this film. Super, super fun, keeps it light, keeps it ridiculous. It's a good time. The raw face of Toby. The raw face of Toby looks kind of crappy. I don't think their practical effects were the best in this film, and his like burnt face just doesn't look great. And then like, what is it with like all those metal pieces all over his face? And they look like giant staples in parts. I don't know. It was really weird. The design was not great. I would have liked a different design, but also it kind of goes with this so ridiculous, so bad it's good situation. Maggie and Mark are pretty stupid to fall for the puppeteering trick with Tina's body. When Tina's been killed and then they find her and it's like kind of dark. It's not dark enough for them to fall for this. And Toby is like using her body and like puppeting. They would have been able to see that, she wasn't moving naturally. She wasn't moving her mouth. They probably would have picked up on the fact that it wasn't actually Tina's voice, even though there's this whole thing thrown into the film where Toby's like, I've got this thing for like perfecting people's voices. At that time, it didn't really sound like Tina's voice so much. And for someone who actually is friends with her, who really knows her, they would know that wasn't Tina. So it's just another ridiculous thing to chalk it up to just being a so bad it's good film. And that's fine. I like the moments of the crowd comments during the film. There were some really funny crowd comments that were thrown out there during the marathon. So I like those things. I'm a big fan of those types of things in films where like someone off screen or someone in a crowd like yells something you can hear and it's funny. Those are some of my favorite moments because it usually catches you off guard because you're focused on what's going on in the scene, not what's being yelled from outside of the scene. So I liked that. The band for performance is super fun. That reggae band, like I already said, brought that party vibe in spades and I loved it. It's an okay twist with Maggie being Gates's daughter. I think I like the twist even more of Toby actually being who she thinks is Gates, and then just unleashing the Toby on the film and his wonderful, ridiculous, over-the-top acting. Love that. Toby trying on all the faces actually makes for a really fun scene, and it's funny when he's talking with his ears just kind of like flopping around. When he's got his normal face that he uses on, but it's not fully attached, and the ears as he's talking just keep like flopping with some flaps of skin there. Funny, once again, ridiculous, over the top, so bad it's good. Very good moment. I get Toby's plan to recreate Gates's film, but how does the killing of everyone connect? My only thought is that he's just off his rocker. So, like, he felt like, I guess maybe he felt like he needed to kill people in order to not have anyone get in his way when he wanted to set up his whole ritual. Because ultimately, he was just trying to get to Maggie because he wanted to sacrifice her in, a recreation of the scene from Lanyard Gates' film. But he didn't have to go around killing everyone. But I guess maybe because he's kind of off his rocker, you're just supposed to assume, he started killing and then he just couldn't stop her. This is just what people who are off their rocker do. They just kill indiscriminately. But yeah, but it was very targeted. It was all the people who were actually running the show. So I'd assume that the explanation would be he's trying to get these people out of the way so he could run the show that he was trying to create. How was Toby able to copy Leon's face without abducting him? Because we see throughout the film that he is copying people's faces and then making them into masks after he captures them or kills them. But then he shows up in the bathroom and is taking a piss next to Leon, which is a funny scene because then he turns and he's like peeing on him. But plot hole, like how did he get Leon's face without abducting or killing Leon? I don't know. Plot hole in my opinion. But you can tell me in the comments if you have a theory on that. That makes sense. I like how the crowd's cheering for Maggie to be killed since they think it's actually all a part of the show, which was a kind of smart thing to have a lot of the theatrics thrown in very early in the film to show that they're doing all these like live actor things, a lot of interactive stuff. So then it gets to the point where you have this crowd cheering it for Maggie's death, but not understanding that that's not part of the show. So the audience member is a little bit horrified in that moment of just like, oh my gosh, these people are literally cheering for her death, but they have no idea that that's what they're doing. They think it's all fake. It's an interesting scene, and I do like that aspect. Toby wastes so much time that it's basically like he doesn't want to succeed in killing Maggie. Note how drawn out what he is doing is. So much so that it gives so much time for Mark to show up and be the hero. It's one of those things, it was pretty common in films back then that they would do that, where they just keep prolonging things, just to give you enough time to see what the hero is up to and get there and make the save. So yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous though. I will say the relationship between Maggie and Mark seems extremely flimsy. You don't really get much of a basis established with their relationship, and then it just makes it so that by the end of the film, where they're kind of reunited and everything's good and they're lovers, it's kind of like, okay, like I didn't care at all. I mean, tell me if you did. If you disagree, go ahead and put it in the comments. Did you care that much about Maggie and Mark's relationship? Because I'm guessing most people did not, for the reason of not laying the track enough for like making it a rich relationship. The ending is for me. And part of it being what I was saying, how they just kind of reuse a kill to take out Toby. But I will say I did kind of like the aspect of him like staying stuck to the mosquito and it's just kind of like going back and forth and he's just like dangling from it. Like that's kind of cool. But in the end, it felt like they could have gone out with like a big bang with the final kill of Toby, but it was just a bit more of like a whimper, personally, is how I feel. The end credits song is terrible, but I love it. It is hilarious how bad that end credits song is, and people need to check that out. It reminds me of, what was it, the end of Maniac Cop 2, how they have like that kind of rap song at the end, but even worse than that, even more ridiculous than that. And I feel a need to re-listen to that song because it's so ridiculous and bad. Listen to the lyrics too. Some really funny, weird lyrics in that as well. So go back, check it out. And I already said this, I'm gonna reiterate though. Tom Villard's brand of over the top makes you want even more of it. He is the shining star of this film, in my opinion. I know a lot of people would probably say Jill Schoelen, but she did a good job. Tom Villard, man, as Toby. Tom Villard. That's why I would rewatch this film, because of Tom Villard. So anyway, out of 5 stars with half stars in play, as a straight up film, I'm going to give it 1.5 stars. No, 2. I would give it 2 stars because there is some kind of like good fun stuff. But is this so bad it's good film? I'm going to give it 4. I'm going to go ahead and give it 4 stars. Pretty strong. Pretty strong as a so bad it's good film. Now, I want your opinions. Do you like it, hate it, in between? Go ahead and put it down in the comments. Talk about whatever. Or if you just want to talk about horror stuff in general, we can do that as well. Do me a quick favor, though. Hit subscribe if you haven't to my channel yet. It means a lot to me. It keeps me motivated because when I'm doing this video right now, I'm not making any sort of money doing this. I'm just putting out free content as a way to kind of build a nerdy horror community so I can talk the way I want to talk about horror films and get in depth and have interactions with people, which is also why I really enjoy the comments. So hit subscribe, also hit the notification bell button because then you'll know when I'm putting up my new videos, and I'm doing 4 a week, which I think is pretty darn good. Regardless though, thank you very much for taking your time to watch this particular video, and until next time, keep it brutal.